Good day everyone, my name is GWYNETH and today we're going to talk about geologic structures. Geologic structures by definition are caused by deformation. It is the arrangement of rocks in the Earth's crust. They can hold economic significance or hold the lives of others. Now for our learning objectives. At the end of this lesson, we can differentiate stress from strain, identify the major types of stress, differentiate the three types of deformation, and lastly, differentiate types of folds and faults.
Stress is the force exerted per unit area, while strain is the physical change that results in response to that force. When you apply stress to the rock, and the stress is greater than the internal strength of a rock, strain results in the form of deformation of the rock caused by the stress. There are three types of stress, which are the compressional stress, tensional stress, and shear stress. The first one is compressional stress. It involves pushing together, and the compressional strain shows up as rock folding and thickening. In compressional stress, it is just like squeezing the rock. So if you have a rock and you put force at both ends, or you basically squeeze it, what happens is the rock becomes thick. The rock will get squeezed, and anything in it will also get squeezed. The other type of stress that we have is tensional stress or tensile stress. It involves forces pulling in opposite direction, which result in strain that stretches and thin rocks. This is exactly the opposite of compressional stress. Let's say you have a rock and you pull it from both sides. It is a tensile stress. Anything in the rock will get deformed. Everything will stretch, everything will get thin, or it will get longer. The last type of stress is shear stress. It involves transverse or crossway forces, and the strain shows up as opposing blocks or regions of material moving past each other. If you only move one part of rock and the other part is still, that is shear stress. When rocks are stressed, the resulting strain can be elastic, ductile, or brittle, and this change is generally called deformation. The first one is elastic deformation. It is a strain that is reversible after a stress is released. For example, when you stretch a rubber band, it elastically returns to its original shape after you release it. While the ductile deformation happens when enough stress is applied to a material that the changes in its shape are permanent, and the material do not go back to their original shape. For example, when you bend a metal bar too far, it can be permanently bent out of shape. On the other hand, brittle deformation is another critical point of no return. Rocks that form in a brittle manner break instead of bend.
Thank you, Faith. Now we are going to proceed to the types of geological structures, which are folds and faults. For folds to happen, there must be high temperature and pressure. The rock layers need to be ductile, not brittle. The Himalayas, Alps, and Andes are a result of ductile formation. There are three main types of folds: anticline, syncline, and monocline. Anticlines form from rock layers that were once flat and horizontal. The oldest rocks are at the center. Meanwhile, synclines are V-shaped and the youngest layer is found at the center of the fold. Whereas a monocline, from the word mono, which means one, bends on one side. There are other types of folds. Under anticline is dome and under syncline is basin. Domes happen when rocks arch upward and has a frown as its cross-section. It is also known as a three-dimensional anticline. Meanwhile, basin is a 3D syncline. It looks like a smiling face in its cross-section. In the left side of the screen, there is a smile, and when there is a smile, it is associated with the basin. Meanwhile, on the left side of the screen, there is a frown, and when there is a frown, it is associated with a dome.
So, fault. A fault is a fracture between two blocks of rock which is caused by compressions and tensions. It is a break or fracture in the Earth's crust. So basically, fault is like when the ground breaks or cracks and the pieces on either side of the break move in different directions. Think of it like a candy bar snapped in half by breaking both ends in opposite directions. So there are three main types of fault: normal fault, strike-slip fault, and reverse fault. So the first type of fault is the normal fault. It forms when two blocks of Earth's crust are pushed together, causing one block to move up the other. So basically, normal fault happens when Earth's crust gets pulled apart around the fault lines, making one block of Earth slides down, making a slide that creates an area which is an uneven area. So next we have the reverse fault. A reverse fault forms when the block of ground above the fault line gets pushed up and over the block below the fault line. So basically, reverse fault happens when Earth squeezes together, making the block of Earth getting pushed upwards. Think of it like pushing a stack of blocks and the book on the top part gets pushed due to the force of the push. And lastly, we have the strike-slip fault. Forms when two blocks of Earth's side patch each other horizontally. To put it simply, strike-slip fault is a crack on Earth which it moves horizontally like a car going past each other. It is caused by shear forces, which is a force that causes materials to side patch each other.